Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. The 2019 general elections may have come and gone, but there are still reactions, especially since we had supplementary elections only last week. The elections, which were held in 28 states, that includes those held last week, the supplementary elections which took place last week, saw the All Progressive Congress take the lead with 15 states, and the People's Democratic Party, PDP, winning in 12 states. INEC has also released plans for the Rivers State elections. Now, we're looking at all kinds of other things in this segment because our topic is actually the state of the nation. And to help us look at this, it's my pleasure to welcome, starting with the lady first, Juliet Benitier, who is a member, Institute of National Transformation. Good morning.
Thank you, Auntie Alera.
And thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
We also have a legal practitioner, Mr. John Oleyede. Thank you for coming. We haven't seen you in a long time.
Well, it's good to be back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. And from Abuja, we have another legal practitioner joining us, Mr. Kayode Ajulo, whom we haven't seen in a long time too. Morning, Kayode.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. It's nice seeing you again.
Thank you very much for coming. So let me begin with the lady. I'm not being feminist or anything.
After me.
There they go. There they go.
Exactly. There's no competition.
So, Juliet, what do you think? Well, we have looked at the main elections. Now, let's just focus on the elections that took place last week, the supplementary elections. What were your thoughts about those elections?
I mean, for me, I don't think, because the exit polls from, from those on the ground, the elections didn't really change much. And I think also the issue of Kanu, the violence that are taking place after election, is still a serious matter arising. And I feel that so much money is being wasted on this process called election unduly, because the issue of the laws of INEC and the participants, and especially the public sector, are very ignorant of this INEC process. And for me, I felt that there was no need. They should have concluded a lot of things. When they kept saying the difference between voided votes and the difference between the two guys, whether there's a gap and all that. And I think we need to move forward by looking at critical numbers and how we're going to move forward in the process. But for me, I looked at the whole supplementary. Look at Rivers is still hanging.
Indeed.
It is a waste of money and human resources. And I think as Africans, and especially as Nigerians, we do not appreciate systems, system building. One of the greatest challenges we have is what we call system building. All over the world, life is about systems. Even God himself began to build systems. Our whole body is systems. We have the productive system, we have the excretory system, all kinds of systems. And when one system breaks down, your body is affected. So it's the same thing with even a nation. When you don't have clear-cut systems, like an election system, there's no system governing even both the INEC. Today you hear, oh, this is in the bylaw of INEC. Oh, no, it's constitutional. Oh, no. There is always that back and forth of lack of clarity. And like I said always, that when it comes to an election, if you are practicing democracy, because you need to understand whether it is democracy you're practicing or we are doing socialism straightforward. So we pick leaders and fix them. We need to choose. If it's a democratic system, it is a system. It came through years and years of processing. Invariably, Nigeria is not the first nation who is practicing this system. In other words, the people we obtained or liked the system from have been operating in many countries up to 200 years. Yeah. Invariably, it is a system that has worked, because in those nations, there is evidence that they have a nation of their desire. Because nation building is about individual sovereignty, the sovereignty of a nation to choose what she or she wants for the betterment of the people. So therefore, Nigeria has to answer questions like, is this system working? Because when a system keep happening, or people are going, fighting, if you remember, I think live on Kano elections, as it was being announced, there was a lot of discrepancies and people were actually arguing back and forth with the man. So it just shows us that we haven't built a system that works. And therefore, the House of Assembly, the ones coming in, because I don't know if these guys are magnanimous or they have time. The lawyer here will tell us whether they still have time before May 29th to do anything. Because they failed the nation by not pushing far the issue of the voters' electronic voting. And even passing voters proper education. You see, you remember I told, they said the last time, I said it's not voter information. What we were getting is called voters information, not education. When you want to educate the people, you let them know that the power to vote is in their hands. Okay. 2, the power of choice is theirs. Okay. 3, the consequence of choices is also theirs. You know, you can't blame God on this one now. Okay. So you need to also take responsibility. So that was lacking. And so that's why we keep having all these back and forth and not having a seamless system that it works for all of us. And at the end of the day, everybody knows that it is the people's choice that mattered. Okay, Mr. Loide. Yes.
She has mentioned the violence that took place in Kano. And if you listened when we were doing the opening, we were talking about action and consequence. What are your thoughts about the happenings in Kano shortly after the hot air that we heard was blown after the first set of elections that happened?
Oh, well, I personally, I mean, Kano was a big letdown for me as a person, and I believe for many Nigerians. It's quite unfortunate that you have a situation where I won't talk about systems failure. I'll talk about institutional failure now. The army failed us. INEC itself failed us. The police failed us. The political class failed us.
Who passed us?
Pastors?
Everybody. Who passed us?
Nobody.
Now, so you see, Nigeria's problem, Kano happens to be the place where the skirmishes were so much, and it's the last one anyway. I mean, what happened in Kano is not different, is not much different from what happened in Rivers State. I mean, I believe Rivers was worse, but because, look, it's the last one that has happened and everybody saw it, and it was meant to be a supplementary election. It was meant to be something smaller. It was not the whole state, just a few local governments. Yes. And to say that, despite the fact that instead of just having the commissioner of police in the state handling that small matter, they had to bring in an AIG, a DIG, they mobilized military men, and yet the touts still had their way. They had the say. Because nobody can say that those elections were free or fair. You saw people with machetes chasing people, cutting people, people were shooting. And so, from my own personal perspective, I feel that Kano was the final straw. Any credibility that could have been ascribed to all the elections that took place, Kano took away everything. It exposed everything bad about the electoral system. And now, taking it from there, you see, she talked about inconsistency. You have a situation now where there are court pronouncements. Courts have made pronouncements. Osun State, for instance, the court said, oh, there was no need for any supplementary election. The election had been won and lost. And when we count this, there was enough to decide the election on. And then immediately thereafter, you still went ahead, you have supplementary election. What are the consequences of pronouncements of courts, which is an institution that should make such pronouncements and interpret the laws regulating elections in Nigeria? What we have on our hands now is a situation where precedents are being discountenanced. Precedents are what the law is about. When the court makes a pronouncement on any particular law or sub-rule or whatever, that should be binding on everybody down the line. Yeah. But these days, even court pronouncements. I was in court on Thursday, and we had to argue something about whether a case should be dismissed or struck out. It's a political case, a pre-election matter. And we had been going for the past 5 adjournments telling the court that this matter has been overtaken by events. The court would say, no, 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 I can't do that. And ultimately, when we went the last time, the lawyer that had been urging that the case should go on filed an application to withdraw the case, to discontinue a case that should have been discontinued months ago. And then we had to talk about whether it should be dismissed or struck out. And he said, look, recently the Supreme Court made a pronouncement that negated the earlier position, which is that when this happens, this should follow. So what's your position? Who am I to talk about what the Supreme Court is saying? If the Supreme Court is overruling itself on matters of this nature, who are we lawyers to talk? That is how low we are falling. Even the courts do no longer provide the guidance we need in this country to tell us how to go.
What you have just painted now is like a very dark situation and position that the country is in. If the courts can't make a pronouncement for the people to follow through and nobody's listening to the courts anymore, the systems have failed, then what's the hope? Mr. Ajulo, what's the hope if all the systems, the judicial system, the legislature, the executive, have failed the system itself? So how can we get out of this?
Hello, you know, it is always so, it sounds so palatable, so desirable to always believe that all the system has failed. I will with respect differ on that. Particularly, let's start with the issue of courts. The way our court has been reported recently, I want to say leave more to be desired. Leave more to be desired in the sense that, except you have a front row audience to what is happening in court, some of the reports in social media, particularly with this advent of this fake news, and even the reports in some main medias, you find out that it is the politician that sponsors most of these reports. And at the end of the day, by the time you are reading some of the things from this court, you are a little bit concerned. But as one of those that I believe I'm most of the time involved in most of the cases in court, it is not exactly what transpired. That's why you find out that maybe on ex parte orders, you see the way it will be spinned and the old people, everybody will believe that there's a problem. Like, let me quickly use one case for you, two cases for you to really understand what I'm trying to say. Like the case in Zamfara. It's a very, very simple case in which the INEC believes that there is no primaries in Zamfara. And the one party went to state high court, which has jurisdiction over the case, to get another. And again, in another climb, that's in Abuja, another party went to court. And what you present before the court is what the court we determine. And at the end of the day, we have two different set of rules on that two instances. But we have this court of appeal too. And you know the way courts work. The way we plead the matter, that's the way it will be done. But the way it's being spinned, the way it's being reported, confused Nigerians that everybody is ready now to cast aspersion on courts. But by the time you have the certified true copies of all these cases, you understand what it is. The same thing about this case of this Code of Conduct Bureau and all tribunals. If you read in some of the media, you'll be so surprised that is that what is happening. But by the time you have the certified true copies of what transpired in court, you now understand. Until yesterday, you find out that the tribunal has already ruled that the Chief Justice of Nigeria has case to answer. But from all the reports, you can see what it is. I think we always believe that it's always so good to tell story about something that is so wrong, because I believe bad news is what everybody wants to read. Though I believe we have some issues, but it is not that everything has gone down completely and there is breakdown. Like the election and like what my sister mentioned there, surprised most of us, we are so disappointed. But one thing we should be so sure about is that that election is a reflection of who we are as a Nigerian. I don't want to believe that we need to blame anybody, we need to blame any institution as much as we wanted to do that. The same way we blame the police, forgetting that in Kano there, some days back, Nigerians were praising, commending a commissioner of police for doing what is great. But how come the same Nigerian police institution that produced such person now the issue with the DIG. You know, in politics, it is everybody seems to say whatever they like, which is understandable. But like the issue of violence on this program, and several times I have been raising this issue, that we continue to have violence in our electoral process until we sit down and we take that political way to punish the perpetrators. Find out, let us ask ourselves, how many senators, how many representatives, how many politicians that have been dealt with, that have even faced a court of law over this issue of violence. And mind you, when it comes to electoral violence, it is not something that you can do alone. There must be a conspiracy. Because for you to go over to a polling unit to hijack vote of over 500 people, you have to go armed. You can't do it alone. Who are those perpetrators? On channel, you can see what is happening. The number of those people, how many times have you seen that they pick any one of them, despite the fact that they were even picked live on national TV? So these are the issue. It is though we will certainly apportion blame, but I believe that we all have to accept this blame as part of us. Okay. Like I said, this election is a reflection of who we are in Nigeria. It is about fight for power, and it seems that everybody, without trying to exonerate anybody,
Mr. Ajilo,
go all out.
That matter you mentioned earlier, the Zamfara matter, about going to two courts, two different people going to two different courts, almost about the same thing. Is that not a problem in itself? If you have me and John here going to two different courts for the same matter, is that not a problem in itself?
It is a problem, and I want us to believe one thing, that our constitution knows that there is always a problem that the court can hear. But if you remember very well, in that time, Zamfara case, the Court of Appeal in Abuja rectify that problem by saying that it's an abuse of court process. That is one of the reasons the rulings of the court of the Federal High Court Abuja was set aside, because first, once you have such kind of case, for such kind of case with you, we have to think of the abuse of court process. And again, you know the way our politicians behave, and you know that in this country, whatever you fight before the court, we are here to have a situation where the court from the first point of contact will reject your claim. You can bring anything before the court. It is the right of the court to do justice to it. And again, like I said, court is not Father Christmas. It's what is placed before the court. The court we educate upon. The court will not go to market or go outside. Outside is confined to start fishing for whether another person has filed this case or not. But at the appeal, if there is such issue and you bring such knowledge to court will do justice, and we should give it to the courts. Court of Appeal in that Federal High Court case quickly do what is needful by setting aside that judgment or ruling, and that is the way. So we should understand that there is always a problem, but for us to have the system that fixes the problem, and because it should actually arise. You know, politicians, they look for everything to go their way. And the same way the system should be able to know how to really cope whatsoever lapses or whatsoever any funny thing anybody may try to do.
Okay, let me come back here to the studio. I'll come back to you, Mr. Lady. The matter of, I know Mrs. Benito wants to weigh in on it, but let me come to you first, since you're the lawyer. So that thing, he said something, he says, you know how the politicians look for loopholes. Yeah. To run the system to their advantage. Yeah. The question is this: isn't that what the courts are supposed to be there for? To stop the politicians from gaining those... Taking advantage of the system.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that'll always be my position, that you cannot say because we know how Nigerian politicians are, we should sit down and refuse to apportion responsibility. There's nothing saying that if there's a written law, the law should be bent when we're dealing with politicians. The law is supposed to be very certain. Even without going to your lawyer, if you take a book of laws and read it, and the law says, prescribes, oh, these are the sanctions for this. Anybody should know, like I always say, every good lawyer knows whether he will win or lose a case from his chambers. He doesn't need to get to court. Some of these cases are matters of mere opinion, telling your client that based on the facts you have given to me, and the documents I have, you cannot win.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Ajulo says, oh, we should not start apportioning blames and all that. Why? That is the problem of this country. We refuse to apportion blames. I have not come out to contest election. I am not going to accept responsibility for the stupid actions of politicians. If a politician chooses to start searching for platforms that will favor him, choosing courts to approach, you know that the court that has jurisdiction is the state high court. You first of all go to the federal high court. You know that, look, this case is better disposed of in the state where the matter occurred. You go to Abuja in respect of a matter in Rivers State, and you get orders that, how do you explain a situation where a lawyer reads the laws, the Electoral Act, the Constitution, then goes to court to get an interim order from a judge in Abuja saying, don't release the certificate of return to a particular person?
Just hold your thoughts.
In
Just hold your
another
thoughts. We'll be back to continue from that point of... Don't go away.